It's a lovely day, so I'm out on the bike again. I'm going to take a look today at the Dazzne P2, if that's how you pronounce it. It's your traditional GoPro style camera. I've got it mounted in my pocket here because I always feel a bit conscious when I put one on top of the helmet, but you could of course put it in your standard GoPro mount if you wanted to. Anyway, without any further ado, let's take it out for a ride and see how it performs. I suppose I should have said self-conscious rather than just conscious. Of course, it's always a good idea to ride a motorcycle when you're conscious. But other than the motorcycle footage, we're going to be taking a look at the camera itself, look at the accessories inside the box, how the camera operates, what happens when you plug it into a television. We'll take it out in the car during the day, and at night time I'll show you some of my traditional shots around Manchester, as well as some stills, and finally we'll also listen to some audio from the camera. So without any further ado, let's get on with the show. Or should that be on with the Showtime, because this is a Dazzne Showtime P2, or is that Dazzne? Or I really don't know how to pronounce that. Anyway, looking at the back of the box, you can see the specs on there. That tells you the resolutions the camera does, as well as its waterproof depth, size and weight, and the maximum size of the SD card. So pause that if you want to know that, but otherwise, inside that box you get two more boxes. Inside those boxes you get all this stuff. In fact, it's amazing they got it all in there. It's really packed in. I don't think you'd ever get it back in the box again. First off, let's look at the mounts. You get the camera case, of course, glass lens on the front of there, 3 buttons which correspond with the buttons on the camera. You got that sort of hinge thing, which is a standard GoPro style one, so you could attach it to those accessories via the hinge if you wanted to. Rubberized back door on this for the waterproofing, and we'll just put that to one side because now we'll look at these things here. You got 4 of these little GoPro style mounts, although a little bit thicker than normal. One is curved and one is flat, and then you've got duplicates of those. So we'll put those to one side as well and just have a look at these first of all. First off, you got these adhesive sticky things here. Those go on the back of the mounts, so no, that's the one for the other one. The square one goes on the back of that one, and then the oval one, I suppose, goes on the back of that one there. Right, so now you got that in your mind. We'll take one of those away, and we'll just have a look how one of these operates. So yeah, it's your standard GoPro style mount on the top, but it's a bit thicker, and the reason for that is if you pinch these two little bits on the side together here, the top actually rotates. It's a rotating mount, which is quite handy. It enables you to have a bit more flexibility with positioning the mount on a helmet or whatever. And then we've got these 2 legs, identical again, so we can put one of those to one side. That's your standard sort of GoPro style leg, although it's a tall one. You've got 2 little screws there, and then you've got elbow joints here, so you can put things at right angles if you wanted. So I'll just assemble this together just to show you what it looks like once you've got the case on top of that hinge. It's quite tall, as you can see, but there you go. You've got everything in the box that you need to get the camera mounted. Now, let's have a look at the other stuff that came inside the box. Well, first off, of course, we've got the camera in here, so let's have a look at round that. Looks quite nice. Nice little device. Button on the front there, 2 LEDs. On the side, we've got the battery compartment. On the back, quite a large screen on there, 2-inch screen. And then on this side, this is where your ports are. You can see you've got a mini USB, a micro HDMI, and a micro SD card slot. Speaker on the bottom with an LED tube on there, and an LED tube or a light tube on the top, microphone on the top, mode button and shutter button on there as well. So that's your camera. Let's look at the other things that came in there. We've got the mini USB lead for charging data transfer. We've got the micro HDMI lead, which is nice. You don't normally get one of those in a box, so that's nice that they put that in there. We've got the instruction booklet, which is alright as well, and 2 batteries. And a battery charger, which is a bit of a novelty. So you can charge your battery whilst you're using the other one, and of course you plug the USB lead into there, plug it into your power adapter you've already got for your iPad or your tablet or whatever it is, normal USB charger, plug that into there, then you can plug these 2 batteries into there and charge them both at the same time. And there's a little LED on the top of here as well that tells you when the batteries have finished charging. So quite nicely you get 2 batteries inside the box. So let's put one of those batteries inside the camera. It's got this good door on here that pulls down, hinges up, quite professional. Drop that into there, just drop straight in. No hassle, very easy to swap the battery around. Now, of course, we're putting a micro SD card in the side here. I've got a 32 gig class 10 card. Please don't skimp on your SD cards. Get a decent quality one from someone that isn't just called Dave from the pub. Right, so looking at that, you can see HDMI, USB, mic and TV. So I thought, mic, that's good. I'll try one of those GoPro mic adapters that plug into the USB socket. Well, tried it, nothing happened, didn't do anything. So maybe that's just on there for absolutely no reason, that bit of text. In addition, it also says TV at the bottom, so I thought that'd be TV out. I plugged in a TV out lead that I've already got, a USB one. Again, nothing came through that, so I don't know whether that works, but I'm pretty sure the mic doesn't. You can always use the HDMI lead out, of course, for getting your video out of it, but I wouldn't bother buying any leads for this unless they were specifically designed for it. Right, turning it on, press the button here, light comes on the top, you can see the screen comes on, light on the back there as well, of course. On the bottom, that's the tube going through, and then two lights on the front, which I don't know why they've got two, they do exactly the same thing, but anyway, there you go. So, as you can see, quite a nice big screen. At the top left we can see it's in video mode. We've got the wide angle on, 1080p 30, that's how much you can fit on the card, the time, the date, and the battery, 100%. Right, so you start recording, tap that one there, you can see the light, changes colour, starts flashing, all the lights flash on the camera unless you change it in the menus, and there you go, we're just recording. So tap it again, obviously goes back into standby. Now if you press the button on the front, you can turn the screen off or adjust the brightness of it, 3 different levels, which is perhaps a nice little feature, I'm not too sure. Right, the next thing we need to do, we'll look into the menus themselves, so we'll tap this one here. As you can see, every time you tap it, it moves through these little icons. Now if you let go, it'll drop into that one, so that drops into the photo mode. Tap it twice, that drops into the interval photography mode. And to get back to the video mode, you can just tap that button at the top left. If I'd have just let go there, it would have got into it. But as you can see, just drop it in on the video icon, it goes back into the video mode there. Right, now let's get into the setup menus. So tap it again, move down to that cog at the bottom right. Now you'd think it would just go into there, but it doesn't. You have to actually select it by pressing the button on the top here. And now we're into the menus for changing all the settings. You'd think this was a touchscreen looking at it. It looks like a touchscreen menu system. It isn't, which is unusual. Maybe it's designed as a touchscreen menu system, but on this camera it's being used with buttons. Anyway, I'm going to go through all the menus, and this is a bit boring, so if you aren't interested, click on the thing on screen to skip. Now for the 2 people that are still here, I'm going to go through each option on the camera, show you what those different things are. It takes about 5 minutes. Now as you go over each icon and highlight it, it tells you at the top what it means. They aren't immediately obvious by looking at them, which is always a disadvantage of an icon based system. Well, we'll look at video parameters. Resolutions, we've got a choice of 1080p, 960p, 720p and WVGA. Now in 1080p we've got the option in frames per second of up to 30 frames per second. 720p goes up to 60 frames a second. But you don't want to use that, I'll show you why later on. Now field of view, you've got a choice of wide, medium or narrow. Again, don't want to use anything other than wide. I'll explain more again later on. Now, capture parameters, this are your stills, this is your still resolutions, 12 megapixel, 8 megapixel, blah, blah, blah. I just left it in 12 for my sample shots. Burst parameters, how many stills do you want to take in a second, or do you just want to take one still when you press the button? Timer parameters, interval photography, it only goes down to 2 seconds. You've got 2, 5 or 10 seconds between automatic taking of stills if you use that mode. Now we'll skip past that one at the bottom because there's even more stuff in there. I'll come back to it in a second, but you can delete things of course off the camera, and then return is always that little arrow if you want to go back a menu. So we're going to the capture setup now. Right, image rotation, it's not really rotation, it's flip. You can put the image up or down. It depends on which way you mount the camera up, of course. Metering, we've got center, spot on average, or center something like, anyway, you know those things. Movie capture, when you're taking a film, you can also have it take a 2 megapixel still at these intervals. I'll show you that later on. It's quite handy actually, that one. Loop recording. If you want to use it as a dash cam, you want it to loop over the oldest footage, that's your setting for that. And then quality on or off. I think I'll have quality on. Why would you want to turn that off? I don't exactly know what that is, to be honest. White balance, you can adjust the white balance here, as you can see. I just left it on auto for all my clips. I don't know what half those things are. Camera raw, what would that do? Don't know. Anyway, move on. TV, if you want to force TV out, I think that's if you're using an AV out rather than the HDMI, switch that on and it should come through, but it didn't for me. Exposure value, nice feature. You can adjust the exposure whilst previewing it on the screen, which is a nice feature to have on a camera like this. I haven't seen this on any others. LCD brightness, you can adjust the brightness. You saw me do it earlier on by pressing the button on the front, but you can do it in that menu. Date stamp, do you want the date stamp on? Do you want the date stamp off, or do you want it just to have the date or the date and the time? Choose in this menu. So I'll show you some footage with and without later on. Return takes us back. Now we'll look at this next one. This is the last menu, system parameters. Got quite a few things in here. Boot mode. Do you want it to boot up into video or photo or interval photography? Boot record. Do you want it to turn on and then start recording immediately? You'll have to have that on if you're using it as a dash camera. Well, you don't have to, but it's advisable. TV mode. Again, using standard def, do you want it to output in PAL or NTSC? Screensaver. Do you want the screen to blank after a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or do you want the screen to remain on all the time? Make your selection now. In this menu you can select whether you want the front LEDs to light up or not, or all the LEDs or all the LEDs to turn off. You can select the volume of the beep sound or not have any beep at all, and you can have the camera automatically power off after a predetermined interval when it's in standby. I'd recommend having one of those on because the camera will switch on if you just tap the top button, so you could accidentally turn it on in your pocket. This is where you select the date and time, and these are the different languages that the camera can have on screen when you're operating it, and on screen you can turn off the display as far as the overlays about the mode you're in and battery life, things like that. And this is the version of the firmware that's on the camera that I'm showing to you now. As you can see there, 13th of April 15, pretty recent really. Right, welcome back everyone, where have you been? Anyway, let's look at some sample clips. As always, I've got downloadable samples available as well. Looking at this clip first of all, you can see this is the 1080p 30 mode, wide field of view selected. Looks quite nice, pretty sharp, good detail in there. Now I want to show you what happens when you change the field of view. So let's move in. This is the mid field of view option. Now all that's happening here is nothing clever, there's no lens movement or anything, it's just cropping down the image. So every time you move into a narrower field of view, you're making your image quality worse because you're just cutting out a little hole in the middle and looking at that. So I suggest always keeping it in the wide field of view. Then you get the full view, and then you can always crop it out later if you want to zoom in on a particular part. And now for my next tip, avoid 720p 60 mode. It just doesn't look very good. I'll zoom in on a bit of it so you can see what the problem is a little bit clearer, and it's all to do with aliasing. That's the diagonal lines here. You can see the handrails on the stairs. Look at all the steps in there. Looks terrible. So 720p 60, avoid that, and also avoid the different fields of view. If you just stick to 1080p 30, wide field of view, you get some really good quality video. Now talking of which, let's go indoors a little bit, see how it copes in a lower light environment. So here I am inside the Printworks. As you can see, it's not really gaining up the brightness any. It's still quite dark in here. It's quite a good representation of the actual light in the place. Doesn't seem to be too much grain in the image. So even though it's not the brightest footage I've seen in here, it's not doing any weird tricks by reducing the frame rate or blowing out the image or anything like that. So it's okay, I suppose. Right, back outside in the sun again. I think the colours here might be a little bit hyper-real, but to be honest, I do like this effect. I think it looks very nice. There's a little bit of processing perhaps going on as well. But overall, I'm very impressed with the image. Let's just have a listen to some sound for a moment. With my head open, gone and my memories fade. Thank you very much. And the crowds don't remember. Thank you. When my hands don't stay the same way. I know you must have loved me. Thank you. He was a nice chap. The sound there was recorded, of course, without the case on the camera. If I'd have done that, you wouldn't have been able to hear virtually anything. And of course it was using the built-in microphone on the top of the camera. Now back to that business about the different fields of view. I'll just show you again what it does. So that's the normal one, that's the mid one there. You can see it just looks a little bit worse, and then that's the narrow field of view. Much better on an action camera, just use the wide one. And of course, again, don't use 720p 60. This is what we're in at the moment. As you can see on the windows there, things are going a little bit weird, a little bit sort of aliasy. Anyway, of course, this camera, as you'd expect, doesn't have any kind of built-in image stabilization, which isn't an issue when you hold it reasonably steady and use that nice wide angle mode. Now, doing this little walk here is quite a good test because you can see I'm walking into the sun at certain parts, and the camera's coping really well. We're not losing any exposure. We can see what's going on still, even though the sun's right in the lens now. And then I'm going to go under this canal bridge here. You can see it gets pretty dark under there, but again, you can still see exactly what's going on. And of course we've got this bright area at the other end, but as it gets closer to it, nicely adjust the exposure to that scene there. So really, I think the exposure on this camera, the way it copes with different lighting conditions, is excellent. And again, as I mentioned before, I'm really happy with the image quality. Now that mode I mentioned where it takes a still every few seconds, I had it set for this journey when I was walking back. So I'm taking 1080p 30 video here, but I've also got it set to take a still every, I think it was 3 seconds or something. The stills it takes are 1920 by 1080 resolution, but of course it takes them at the same time you're taking the video, so it is quite handy. Say you went out on your bike or something, you get some stills as well as the video. Anyway, talking of go out on the bike, let's go out on the bike now and have a look at some of that footage. Now, I've done another video on YouTube where I explain what happens with YouTube encoding when you go under trees like this. Things tend to start looking like it was shot in Lego vision. But when you're out in an area like this without so much shadow, it looks alright. Now, if you don't understand anything about encoding or bit rates, then I suggest you look at that video. I'll put a link on the screen here which explains it a little bit better, but basically all that's happening is there isn't enough bit rate to go around. However, the original footage that I'm looking at now while I'm editing this looks excellent. Really good quality. As you can see, nice and sharp all over as well. You can see the speedo, you can see all the details there on the trees and things, or hope that you can anyway. I'll put downloadable samples available for you. You can download this particular section here. I'll put this one so you can see what it looks like without the YouTube re-encoding, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised or impressed, or maybe it's just exactly what you're expecting. Now, another thing I want to show you is when you join clips together in this camera, you get a bit of overlap, you get a bit of repeat on the next clip from the previous one. So let's have a look. There you go. See that there where it jumped back just a fraction of a second. Now, I'd set the camera to do loops of say 3 minutes, so it did little 3-minute clips, added a load of those together. When you add them together you get that jump. Pretty easy to take out in editing if you want, and if you don't like it, make longer segments, and if you really don't like it, set your camera to record without any looping, which will give you I think a 4 gig file, which is quite a bit of time without a file join. Now, I also took the camera out in the car. To do this I put it in its case, I put it upside down, I enabled the flip option in the menu, and I suction cupped it to the window. And then I was thinking, yeah, this makes quite a decent dash cam. But then I realised there's no way to power the camera whilst it's in the case. You'll need to have some way of mounting the camera without a case, and of course it's not got a tripod screw hole on the camera itself, if you want to be able to plug a wire into it to use it as a proper dash cam and power it from your 12-volt lighter socket. However, if you do power it from your lighter socket somehow, it will automatically start and stop if you want it to, and it will loop over the oldest footage on the memory card when the memory card gets full again if you want it to. Those things are all configurable in those menus that I was showing you earlier on when no one was watching. Now, I also took the camera out in the dark in the car, of course. This is in my other car. Again, mounted it quite a way over to the left, but you just get an idea how it copes with low light. Now, you'll notice the sky's got a bit of light in it, a little bit of blue. This was about 10:30 at night that I recorded this. Notice also no timestamp at the bottom right. So what does that tell you? Yes, you can turn the timestamp off. People always ask that question. So notice some clips had it on, some didn't. That's because I turned it off. But anyway, as you can see here, looks all right. We've got white street lights that maybe are the reason that it looks pretty decent. So I didn't want to fool anyone. I decided to go and take it down a street with no street lights on so you can see what that looks like. Now, this car has rather poor headlights, but as you can see, you are able to make out what's going on. I don't think there's any real light coming from the sky that's lighting this up, so it's all my headlights that's lighting this lane. Not the best performance ever, but adequate, I'd say. Okay, right, let's look at some stills that I've taken with the camera. These, of course, are 12 megapixel stills. You can't see them at that resolution on YouTube. Again, I'll have a few available for you to download. But overall, the stills look all right. Let's crop in on this one to see what detail you've got in there. So that looks okay. So, yeah, stills don't seem bad at all with this camera. Now, if you plug the camera into a television using the supplied micro HDMI lead, you can see a live video feed. However, you cannot record and view the video at the same time. It won't let you record with the HDMI lead plugged in. However, it will let you go through the menus and change settings and things. And of course, the real reason for having an HDMI out is to be able to view the video footage over the HDMI lead. As you can see, that works fine. You can skip back and forth through the clips, you can play them, and you can fast forward them. It's a little bit fiddly trying to figure out what button does what on the camera, but it does work, and it seems to work quite well. Okay, let's look at some stats and try and clear up some questions before they happen. So first off, the video format the camera records in is MOV, that's an H.264 codec. The battery life is 2 hours per fully charged battery, and of course you get 2 batteries in the pack. That battery life was tested in 1080p 30 mode with the LCD screen turned off. The bitrate in 1080p 30 mode, which is the only mode that's really worth using, is 15.5 megabits a second. That's a variable bitrate though, so it will vary a little bit. However, 3 minutes of 1080p 30 video using that bitrate is approximately 360 megs, so you can figure out yourself how much you could fit in time on a memory card. Now there are some people that don't really pay attention when I'm talking, which I can understand, and then ask a question at the end. So trying to preempt those questions, let's go through a few of the more common ones. Yes, it will function as a dash cam. If you can find a way to mount this camera and power it, it will automatically start and stop, and of course it will loop over the oldest footage on the memory card when the memory card is full if you select those options in the menus. And of course, if it works as a dash cam, that means yes, of course it will record and charge at the same time. Pretty much any camera I've tested will do that. And yes, you can turn off the timestamp. I know I've shown you a couple of times, but there's always that one guy that just doesn't listen to anything. And then there's always another guy that says, can you power it via a USB power pack? Well, of course you can. I mean, USB power is 5 volts. Now, it might be 1 amp or half an amp or whatever. So if you've got a USB power pack that supplies 5 volts, 1 amp, which they all supply 5 volts, then yes, you can power it via that. And no, it doesn't have Wi-Fi. Someone always says, oh, does it have Wi-Fi? Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention Wi-Fi. I've just spent a week editing this video together, and I completely forgot about it. It went straight out of my mind. No, it doesn't have Wi-Fi. Sorry about that, I don't know what came over me there. Anyway, let's sum this up. Really well put together camera. If you use 1080p 30 mode only and wide field of view, you get some really good quality results. Very well constructed, like the fact you get 2 batteries inside the box, easy to swap out. Nice big screen on the back, does tend to bleach out a bit in sun, but then you've got that issue with the operating system. It looks like a touchscreen operating system, but you have to use buttons to navigate it, which does take quite a while to get through the menus. That's the only real downside as far as I'm concerned. Other than that, I think this is a really good camera, and it's great value for money considering all the things that you get with it. So overall then, scoring system, we're getting a green for the physical, we're getting a green for the results. The only thing that it lets down slightly is the operation. That's because of the menu system just being a little bit convoluted and difficult to navigate. So there you go, that was my review of the Dazzne P2. Now, if you like the look of this camera and you want to buy one of these, there's links to purchase one in the video description. But all that remains for me now is to say, as always, thanks for watching.